Hello, Cleveland. Welcome back to another edition of the 1085 Gridiron Podcast. I am your host, Jack McCurry, and returning to the podcast is my co-host, Anthony Joki. Anthony, it's been like we were talking about right before we started recording, 3 months since you've been on an episode. How's everything going on your end, bud?
Hello, is this thing on? Um, yeah, it has been a minute, hasn't it? I think the last thing we did, I think you mentioned, was the schedule release. Um, at that time, we weren't sure if we were going to get a season or not, but it seems like things have been progressing towards that we might actually be playing. You know, I don't think we're going to have any kind of fans in the season, but in terms of myself, I've been doing all right. I've been playing lots of golf because that's really the only thing um, I can do and focus on right now with everything else kind of locked down. But it's been a wild few months, it's been a wild 2020 just to face it. With everything that's happened with this pandemic and not having sports for so long, finally getting baseball back. We'll see how long that lasts, but hockey's going on. You got the Blue Jackets playing a playoff game right now. Basketball's starting up. No Cavaliers, unfortunately, but training camp right around the corner, and hopefully we can get back to a little normalcy with having sports on our television.
Absolutely, man. It feels like normalcy is getting back, with all the sports going on. Hopefully, we get some high school sports. That's left to be determined. Uh, but, we jumped on because we do have some big Browns news today, obviously. If by the time you listen to this, you should know defensive tackle Andrew Billings is one of the three opt-outs on the Browns roster currently. The deadline is this coming Thursday. And, all the big media guys covering the league saying that there could be some more big names coming between now, which we're recording on Tuesday night, and Thursday. Billings, offensive guard Drew Forbes, and undrafted rookie offensive tackle Drake Dorbeck are the three so far for the Cleveland Browns. Billings is definitely the biggest one. He signed with the team in free agency coming over from the Bengals. There was some big expectations for Billings to be a part of a three-man rotation with Sheldon Richardson and Larry Ogunjobi, and he was going to be the run stuffer in the middle of that defensive line. And now that's gone. I mean, Anthony, when you look at it, we'll talk about Forbes and Dorbeck and what they could have potentially brought to the team, but Billings, this is a big loss for the Browns, and now we're kind of wondering like who is going to be that run stuffer inside in the middle of that defensive line.
Yeah, that's a really big question because when they signed Andrew Billings, they really expected him to, be that guy in the middle of that defense in that rotation. And for a team that ranked 30th in a run last year with the Cleveland Browns, adding him to go with Sheldon Richardson, Larry Ogunjobi, and drafting Jordan Elliott, I there's definitely a lot of playing time to be had, especially in running situations for Andrew Billings. I would think on more of the passing downs, you would see another free agent. They signed Adrian Claiborne, Myles Garrett, and Vernon out there with one of those three guys kicked inside. And I would imagine Ogunjobi would be the fourth guy in that passing situation. But, when you're looking to stop the run, you need certain guys in there, and Billings was going to be that. But obviously, that's not going to happen. So now, Andrew Berry spoke to me today, and he said it best. He supports Andrew in his decision 100% to opt out, as well as Drew Forbes and Dorbeck as well. But the mentality has got to be this next guy up, because when you look at this season and what's going to happen, and if we do get to play some football games, you could have a half dozen guys out in any given week because of this disease that's going around. So the whole mindset has to be next guy up. So whether that be Jordy Elliott, whether that be Ogunjobi, somebody's got to step up. It's some big shoes to fill, but hopefully somebody on this roster can do it, or somebody even off the roster in free agency.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at who's currently on the roster behind Richardson and Ogunjobi, and obviously Jordan Elliott, who was the team's third-round pick, and there's some expectations for him, but I mean, he was going to be part of the rotation, but he's more of that pass rushing type. But when you look at who else is behind them on the roster, you got Daniel Ekuale, who played limited amount of snaps last year. Eli Anku, I think we're gonna say that's the pronunciation. He was on the roster towards the end of last year. Didn't play much. Didn't even make anything to be in the statistical category. And then Jeffrey Wheatley, who's an undrafted rookie, that's going to be fighting for a roster spot. And it's going to be tough for him just because there's no preseason. So he's really going to have to turn some heads out on the practice field with the limited amount of snaps he'll get during practice. But, Anthony, you mentioned free agents, and there's some names available on the free agent list for potential guys that the Browns could bring in. They're also at 77 players on the roster right now, so they could bring in 3. One of those is probably kept for Garrett Gilbert, who's on the COVID reserve list right now. But you look at the free agent options out there. Mike Daniels, Browns fans are familiar with him. They brought him in last year for a visit. He ultimately signed with Detroit. Damon Snacks Harrison, who's been a long time force in the middle, whether he's with the Giants. I think he was recently with the Lions as well. Marcel Darius, former top 5 pick, recently with the Jaguars. Timmy Jernigan, who was with the Ravens for a long time. And Corey Luggett, who I remember him being with the Chargers. I don't know if he's been anywhere else, but there are some names there. Anthony, off the top of your head, who do you think would be the best option out of those 5 free agents I mentioned?
Well, they're actually back up to 79 because they activated Hilliard and Moffitt
Good
today.
call.
So they're back up to 79, but they still got one spot to play with. And like you said, it might be for Garrett Gilbert. But since, we're still in training camp mode, any one of those players that are ranked 75 to 80 on the roster, can easily be sacrificed for another defensive lineman that they could bring in. When you look at that list, Snacks Harrison definitely raises an eyebrow. It's going to come at a hefty cost, I feel. I know the Browns still have quite a bit of cap room, which, is always a topic of discussion. I think he could definitely fit into that defensive rotation as a run guy. Let's see. Look at this list that you had sent me here, just to get all the names. All those guys on there. I think I like Snacks Harrison the most. He's a guy who's been in the league for a while, can come in, is a veteran guy, and when you're has so much limited practice time and on-field time, I would think signing veterans would be the move to go. Somebody that could just come in right away, pick up what's going on, and be on the field within a day or two, and kind of get the gist of what's going on playbook wise. So, looking at that list, I know it might cost a little bit, but if you're trying to put the best line out there, I think Harrison would be the best bet to go with.
I'm going to throw a name out. And I have it in our notes as a wild card signing. He's been linked to the Browns all offseason. You mentioned kicking guys inside on certain plays. What if they signed Jadeveon Clowney? I mean, he's still out there. I don't know what his cost would be at this point. I'm sure he would want a significant contract, even on a 1-year deal. But you bring him in, you have Vernon, you have Garrett, you have Claiborne, you have Richardson, you have Ogunjobi, you add Clowney to the mix. Then you can go ahead and say, yeah, we'll roll with Elliott, Ekuale, maybe even an Anku as your backup defensive tackles. But then you have Clowney, who is one of the best run stoppers in football, and you have an unbelievable defensive line at that point.
You were you were definitely right in calling it the wild card. Um, at this point in time, I don't know if signing Jadeveon Clowney is the best move out there. I know it would, make major news and everybody would be really excited. Um, it would certainly be an upgrade to the run defense, but it doesn't really help you in the interior because he's a guy who obviously plays the defensive end spot. He's great at setting that edge. I'm not sure how great he is playing in the middle, taking up double teams like they ask those interior guys to do a lot. So I'm not entirely sure that would be the best move for the Browns in this kind of situation that they're in right now.
I just think back to, Joe Woods is coming over from San Francisco, all those defensive linemen that he had. And I know he did have Buckner and he had, I'm trying to think who the other defensive tackle was that he had. But I mean, they had so much talent that he was able to make it work. I think if you just add Clowney, I think they could make it work somehow. I mean, it's kind of bold and it's me just, in a pipe dream. But at this point, if you can get Clowney and then you just try to make it work with what you got, I mean, that's so much talent on that defensive front that.
Well, that's another thing to keep an eye out too. When roster cuts go down, there's probably a guy that's going to be out there where you kind of don't expect to be available, but if San Francisco cuts somebody that Joe Woods really likes on that defensive line, that could be that run stopping guy. Maybe they wait till that kind of time frame to grab a guy to help in the interior.
That is true too. I mean, roster cuts are going to happen. They could also pull a trade off out of nowhere. I mean, Andrew Berry, I think he's real smart about the roster, and I think I'm sure him, Stefanski, Joe Woods, they're sitting down looking at all the options. They might roll with what they got. They might pull something out of nowhere that nobody expects, but we'll just have to see how it all plays out. Talking about the other opt-outs, Drew Forbes, obviously coming into his second season, a lot of people expected him to compete at right guard with Wyatt Teller. Now you're at a point where it's Wyatt Teller's job to lose. Chris Hubbard is the other option, I would think, at that right guard spot. It's disappointing because I think a lot of people were excited to see what Forbes could do. Because last year, I mean, there was a little hype behind him potentially being a contributor. Then he got hurt in the preseason, and then he came back and didn't play because Teller ultimately took the right guard spot and ran with it down the stretch. It's disappointing, but much like anybody that's opting out, I don't fault them just because of the uncertainty with this pandemic and the virus. It's just disappointing because there was a little bit of expectations for Forbes, but now he's out for the year. And then when he comes back, his spots wasn't already guaranteed just because it's a new regime. But, being a year away from football just makes the road for him to contribute on an NFL roster that much tougher.
Yeah, definitely. And, this is going to give the Browns a very thorough look at Wyatt Teller at the right guard spot. I would imagine that, going into training camp, there's probably going to be some kind of battle there, at least a little bit. Now, I would tend to think that I know there's Chris Hubbard is still here, but I would tend to think that when you're doing all the lineman work and doing all the first team stuff and run assignments, block assignments, all of that, I would think that that's going to be Wyatt Teller for the entire time. And it will definitely give them a thorough evaluation going into the season. And obviously, if he's able to stay healthy and play all 16 games, that would give the Browns an opportunity to really look at him and see, okay, maybe we want to keep this guy long term, and maybe the right guard spot is figured out, and your old line is set across the board if that's the case, because you have the rookie that they drafted at left tackle. You had why am I blanking at the offensive line position right now? They had Joel Bitonio, obviously, at left guard. They have Treader at center. They have the guy who signed a free agency to play right tackle. Why am I
Jack
blanking on
Jack
names?
Conklin is the right tackle. Jedrick Wills is the left tackle.
Thank you.
Anthony, you've been off 3 months.
This
I'll
is
let it slide.
this is what happens when I've been gone for so long. I forget everybody on the roster. I gotta retrain my brain uh, for everything Browns. If we're gonna continue to do this, I mean, goodness gracious,
Quarantining has gotten the best of us. Man. It's been a tough year. Right.
I know, it sure has. But if Teller's able to um, stick it out and do a really good job, and he's able to be the right guard, then you're right. Drew Forbes' spot uh, may not be on the Browns in 2021, but along with Andrew Billings, Andrew Forbes, their contracts roll over. So the Browns will have Billings for next year under contract, and then they will have Drew Forbes under contract for 3 more seasons after this season as well.
Yeah, definitely. And even if he doesn't work out with the Browns, he's got solid athleticism for an offensive lineman. So I think he'll find a spot in this league. I mean, he's still only 24 years old, so there's still time for Forbes to turn into something. I mean, even if it's just a rotational piece, he's got the athleticism that, teams seem to love now in offensive linemen. And as far as Dorbeck, sorry, he probably wasn't going to make this team, but with them expanding the practice squads, there could have been a chance that he would have made the practice squad, since they're expanding it to 16 players this year because of all the uncertainty. So, but I mean, his rights will roll over too. And I mean, at 6'7", 317 pounds, like if this guy, I mean, if he stays in that shape, who knows? He might become a backup tackle or something for the Browns in 2021 or beyond. So, like we said, we don't fault anybody for opting out. I mean, especially a lot of these linemen, just because of the health certainties and, being that big. I mean, it's a health risk. So I don't fault anybody opting out. And I'm sure Anthony feels the same way.
Yeah. I mean, I took 2 months off of work because of my medical condition. I was not going to put myself at extreme risk. And, for guys who play a contact sport and everything and deal with people very up close and personal, I have no hard feelings at any player across the league opting out and putting themselves and their families first. There's 100% fine by me.
Absolutely. It's going to be interesting to see if there's any more opt-outs. We'll probably sit back down and record another episode this week because there was plenty more Browns news that we needed to discuss, but we wanted to get up here and sit down and do an episode about Billings just because it is a big news item for the Browns. Anthony, is there anything else or before we get on out?
I don't think so. Besides the fact that I have homework to really crack down and catch myself up on everything that I've missed over the past few months.
Yeah, I'll send the roster over to you and let you start studying up.
You got to do something. I mean, goodness gracious, that was embarrassing. But kind of glad to be back doing this with you. And we definitely have a lot of stuff we want to do this year, and hopefully we can continue to have football and things go smoothly getting ready for the season, and we'll be able to actually kick off in week 1.
Absolutely. With that, you guys can follow us on Twitter at the Dogland. That's where you'll find the podcast. That's where you'll find all of our articles that myself, Anthony, and Jack Duffin write for thedogland.com. You can follow Anthony personally on Twitter at Anthony Joki. That's Joki. You can follow me on Twitter at JackMcCurry08. And with that, until next time, go Browns.